Okay, good morning, everyone. You're very welcome to the third Sustainable Cork programme webinar in this year's series. Today's topic is focused on energy and specifically fueling business and opportunities in crisis. So over the next hour or so, we'll focus on energy efficiency and reducing your business carbon footprint, all while making cost savings. To set some context for today's session, I can tell you that we've recently just collated results from our quarterly members economic trend survey. And in this Q3, we found that member businesses are feeling the impact of rising energy prices. In fact, the survey found that 92% of businesses are concerned about the impact of rising energy prices. And interestingly, 24% have stated that they're identifying energy efficiency as a top priority for action. Primarily, we found that cost savings were the main motivating factor for companies, but this is closely followed by businesses being motivated by their climate and sustainability impact. So we know businesses like you that are joining here today are already being proactive, being aware, getting informed, and making a plan. So this morning, we'll hear more about why and how energy efficiency makes good business sense. So before I introduce you to our panel, some housekeeping. So we ask that you turn off the mic, your own mics. We're recording this session for our own records. You're very welcome to use the chat box for Q&As to join in the conversation. And if you're welcome, or if you're enthusiastic, you're very welcome to unmic and join in the discussion at the end. So without further ado, I'm pleased to extend a welcome to our speakers and our moderator and to you, our participants this morning. First off, we have Harry O'Farrell. He's the Chief Commercial Officer at Action Zero and also Chair at Energy Cork. Harry will be our moderator. We have Sean Sir, a Senior Consultant in Energy and Sustainability at EM3. And finally, we have Conor Malloy. He's an Energy Advisor, Trainer and Auditor at Authentic Energy Management Services. So thank you, and over to Harry.
Thanks, Margaret. Welcome all. Delighted to see so many participants on the call this morning. Certainly very topical, very timely, a big business challenge for all, as Margaret has alluded to there. Look, I'm just going to very briefly introduce myself, Action Zero. I'll talk to you a little bit about Energy Cork and what we do before handing over then to Sean initially to talk us through his presentation. So look, as Margaret has said, I'm Chief Commercial Officer with a business called Action Zero. We are a Cork headquartered climate technology business specializing in high temperature heat pumps. One of a suite of businesses backed by the entrepreneur Piers Flynn. So we're growing quite significantly, investing and creating high skilled climate action jobs here in Cork and through our manufacturing plant in Kerry. So look, what we do effectively is we support industrial, healthcare and enterprise consumers to decarbonize heat with our own range of high temperature heat pump systems. Energy Cork is Ireland's largest energy industry cluster. We represent 95 or so members active in the energy space here in Cork and more broadly across Ireland also. We run a range of initiatives. I suppose most notably and maybe relevant to listeners on the call today would be our SME Energy Champion initiative, which we partnered with on Cork Chamber and SEI, ran a successful pilot program supporting SMEs to increase their knowledge and capacity in energy management. And delighted to share with you also that we're scaling up this initiative to 100 SMEs in the coming months. So keep an eye out on the Cork Chamber comms for an opportunity to participate in that. Certainly something very relevant. So look, a little bit of scene setting, I suppose. As Margaret has said, latest Chamber survey showing over 92% of businesses are either very concerned or concerned about rising energy costs. We know from working with customers that many of you are facing a doubling or even a tripling of your energy costs, which is a huge challenge for any business to face up to. I suppose for us, you know, as people active in the energy space, certainly to see that only 24% are actively considering energy efficiency as a means to reduce that risk, we would view that as a very low number. So literally, you know, the cost of energy the way it is, the only way to view that is that is euros on the floor that you're wasting. It's a case of trying to identify how you can minimize that waste, and there are very many simple and easy steps you can take to start the process. It doesn't all have to be very daunting and you know, scary, I suppose, to make a start. So look, that's setting some scene. I'm going to hand over to Sean, sir, who's Senior Consultant Energy and Sustainability with EM3. Again, a very innovative and dynamic Cork-based company active in the energy and sustainability space. Sean, over to you.
Thanks, Harry. So just share my screen. Okay, so I'm going to take you through a short presentation here today, just about how we at EM3 approach the challenges facing industry in terms of energy and carbon targets. So who are EM3? We are part of SHV Energy. So originally EM3 was founded by two guys in Cork out of two separate businesses. So this was maybe 14 years ago. And over the last number of years, that business has grown to a point where 2 years ago we were purchased by SHV Energy. SHV are a Dutch company, one of the largest private-owned companies in the world, and they also own the likes of Caller. So they started off as trading in coal back in the 1800s, early 1900s, moved into oil, and then moved into gas. So they have evolved their business to meet the growing challenges in the energy industry. Recently, their main focus has been on LPG, and they've purchased EM3 as a way to complement that business. And for us, that has been a great boost to the business and helped us continue our growth path. So we're active in 4 continents. SHV has 30 million customers and about 16,000 employees. So EM3 ourselves, we have a global footprint in terms of our service delivery. So we're one of Europe's largest industrial energy services company. We manage roughly over 500 million euro of energy globally for industrial clients, mainly in process and utilities. That's our main expertise. We've carried out audits all over the world. We can do these remotely or in person. Throughout the pandemic, we had to do it 100% remotely using various different technologies. And typically we would find that customers would benefit from around 5 to 7% roughly in cost savings from our services alone, just in the insights that we provide. Some of our clients are across the dairy, nutrition, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, data centers, medical devices. So as a company, we would have dealt initially with many of these companies here in Ireland first. And then following the success of our engagements here in Ireland, we would have then been brought on board to do this, repeat that work with the company's other locations across the world. So that's how we've grown as a company. Like I said, very strong in process utilities, and we pride ourselves on developing innovative solutions to energy challenges. So the main challenges for our clients that we see, so carbon reduction, looking at science-based targets, developing strategies toward net zero carbon. Cost reduction, very big topic at the minute, especially with the rapid increase in energy costs, which is putting the squeeze on businesses. And through looking at energy efficiency opportunities and developing a roadmap to be more efficient and reducing carbon, you can deliver those cost savings. Understanding energy use is a big thing. So if you're not measuring it and if you're not tracking it, you don't know that you are on the right path, that you're achieving your goals, and that you're working towards those targets. So understanding energy in terms of the significant energy users, what is impacting that energy? Is it weather or is it your production activities? There's also compliance and auditing. For many businesses, this is something that they need to develop a plan for, which is, and looking at energy efficiency, but also looking at how to use less energy and use energy better. So the most our chief remit when we go into a new site or with a new client is to reduce their demand. So can we get that demand for energy down as much as possible? And then that makes it much easier and much more cost effective to deploy new technologies then at a later stage. And also look at renewable energy at a later stage. We also do look at businesses are always expanding, and that's a great thing. And with that expansion, their energy footprint will grow. So we look at how do we implement an energy efficiency program, but also allow for that increased expansion and still maintain the carbon reduction targets. We take a very much a data-centric approach to how we conduct our business. So if we look at an example, if we take of 250 data points on a site at 15 minutes intervals, that's over 8 million energy data points, which we then drill down to about 2,500 energy events. From that, we work with our client to discuss maybe 100 actions out of all those 2,500 energy events. Those actions will then potentially lead to typically 10 or more opportunities per 100 actions, about 10%. And then those opportunities then will be developed further into projects, which will then lead to the energy savings. So the data is key. So understanding how you're using energy, how much you're using when, what are the drivers for energy. These are the key understandings that are needed in order to deliver sustainable energy efficiency reductions and energy reductions. So, and moving on then, so in terms of climate action in industry, there is, I suppose, may or may not be familiar with the different terms around. So scope 1 and scope 2 are the ones that are most frequently talked about at the minute. So scope 1 being the emissions that come from the use of energy on site. So burning fuel in your boilers, vehicles used on sites or within the business boundaries. Scope 2 is indirect. So that would typically be your electricity that you import from the grid. And scope 3 being the emissions associated with the supply chain, products coming towards you and your products going out towards your clients downstream. Our typical roadmap example, so how we go about it is we start off by setting what are the goals, what are the targets that need to be achieved, and what is the scope around that. So what do we include in those targets? The most important thing is to develop a baseline, measure your footprint, understand where you're starting from, and then look at the what initiatives and what projects can be implemented to deliver on those targets. And then it's a case of communicating the program within the wider company, making sure everybody's on board, and periodically going back over the achievements and reviewing the targets and reviewing the strategy and making sure that you're progressing in the way that needs to be. When we're engaging with clients in terms of energy and sustainability, there's four main pillars where we would look at that. So climate action and energy audits. So that's straightforward, looking at what actions can be taken to reduce energy and to reduce carbon emissions. What projects and what design input is required to deliver those projects to realize those energy efficiency opportunities. Can we incorporate renewable energy in the site? That's something else that is becoming a big ask and a big reality for many commercial and industrial clients. And energy performance contracts are another way of engaging where capital or funding needs to be delivered from alternative sources and to ensure that those projects get delivered. I have here in the slides Peer, which is it's just our platform for managing data. So it's just to show that data is at the center of all that. So our typical carbon roadmap, so this is one that we developed for one of our clients. So they started out in 2021, and there was a number of projects identified, energy efficiency projects that would be implemented in 2021, 2022. A big project then in the phase 2 was a heat pump and heat recovery optimization. So one of the big areas where we focus on our clients, especially in terms of thermal energy, is to look at what are all the heat map for the site. So where is heat being used? Where is heat being generated? Very often there's cooling operations on one side rejecting heat out, while on the other side there is boilers, steam boilers, gas boilers being running away trying to generate heat for process. So our goal is to see, can we reduce that waste heat, recapture it, use heat pump technology or mechanical vapor recompression technology to get to generate high grade heat or steam and bring that back into the facility in a more efficient way. The next phase in this here is looking at dehumidification and other opportunities. And finally then, once we have reduced the demand for energy as much as possible, then we look at the transition into biofuels and renewable energy. That's typically the way we would lay out our carbon strategies. And here just showing it graphically, the reduction. So starting off with the baseline on the left-hand side, about 4,500 tons of CO2, and then the various different initiatives, the projects at each phase, and how they impacted the carbon baseline. And finally, in phase 5, the introduction of biofuels, getting you down to a net zero carbon emissions. So with this particular project, the energy savings were about 5.4 million kilowatt hours and a financial savings of 268,000 euro. So in terms of what I spoke about before, a data-driven approach, we would look at developing an understanding of your performance through gathering data. So that could be through metering or conducting site audits and getting that information and analyzing that information. If you have the ability to measure regularly with a higher frequency, then that can give you very powerful insights into where energy is being perhaps wasted or where there are opportunities for further energy efficiency. So it really is an important area in terms of delivering sustainable energy efficiency gains. So finally then, just go through some of the main sort of projects that we might have delivered over the recent years. So there was first of all, it was a heat pump project, so 1,400 kilowatt heat pump, an ammonia heat pump. And in this process, we, as I discussed earlier, we looked at where we could recover heat that was being rejected, being discarded on the site. We recovered that, and through using the heat pump, we were able to generate heat for process, and that led to over half, maybe 60% reduction in the heat requirements for the site. Payback on a project like that was 3.3 years with massive savings, massive carbon savings. So a very good process, and this is typical of the type of study we would do. So we would try to understand the thermal map of the site, see can we reconfigure it, can we move some of the users from high temperature to lower temperature. So reducing temperatures is one of the fastest and best ways, if you can, to deliver energy savings. And then that also opens you up to delivering further savings through the use of heat pump technology and other efficiency technology. If you take the example of starting off with a process that is using steam at maybe, let's say 70-75% efficient, if you can get in the first step, get that onto from steam onto low pressure hot water, which might be 90-95% efficient, that's already an efficiency jump of 20%. And if you can also then meet that with the heat pump with the COP of 5, which is we can use equivalents of 500% efficient, then really you've made massive gains on your energy efficiency, your energy costs in that scenario. Another case study we looked at, again, heat recovery. Here we identified that the air compressor and refrigeration circuits were prime sources of heat to be recovered and brought back in. So before we started, all that heat was getting rejected out into the air, and they were paying on the other end to generate that heat through usual means, gas-fired boilers. So we recovered that heat. We also installed a high efficiency, low pressure hot water boiler, brought the users from steam into low pressure hot water, and through many other initiatives, cut the demand for heat in half. So this is quite often what we find in terms of even on mature sites. By mature sites, I mean sites who have a mature energy management plan. There is still scope for big opportunities in terms of recovering heat and developing a more efficient generation process. Okay. Another, just the last one, that free cooling. It's something we look at by redesigning the air handling system, optimizing the ability to free cool. There's potentially 50% savings there between the old and new, and especially in this case study. Most of our energy efficiency projects we look at payback within less than 4 years. In terms of more immediate actions, housekeeping, which would be looking at leaks, compressed air leaks, steam leaks, resetting temperatures, those kind of savings, they can be done straight away. And we would typically find between, even for a mature site, 5-10% savings for a site without an energy management program, maybe up to 20% savings just in housekeeping. So those are areas that we really would focus on as a roadmap to getting significant savings in quickly. Just finally, if people are interested in how do they develop a carbon roadmap strategy, we have a tool here. It's just a free tool. It takes about 15 minutes just to go through and answer some easy questions. when you go through this tool, you get some case studies that you can go through and maybe give you some inspiration on how you can maybe apply those things. And you can always reach out to us if you need any more information on that. That's it from me. Thanks very much.
Super. Thanks a million for that, Sean. Really, really informative. I'm mindful of the kind of diversity in the audience, certainly some larger energy users in the mix, but a lot of SMEs there as well. So look, I might pose one or two more general questions, Sean, and as you say, the application and the principles are the same regardless of the size of your organization. It's all about eliminating waste first, and then looking at opportunities for renewable energy. But just to touch on something you really emphasized there as being a key starting point to the whole thing is actually understanding your use and data. And I guess maybe for larger energy users, often are drowning in data, have got loads of it. But for mid-sized, smaller organizations, I mean, can you just give some context about the importance of that, regardless of size, that understanding data is what it's all about?
Absolutely. So even if you have access to data or without the access to data, you don't really know what is driving your energy. So you might get your bill monthly, and that gives you a bit of an insight as to what happens month to month, but it doesn't really tell you what's driving your energy usage. What's really giving you headaches in terms of energy use, and particularly for a lot of sites where manufacturing is quite often an intensive thermal process, looking at your gas consumption or your heating consumption, and being able to drill down into that's what develops the opportunities that you can go after. For sites that don't have that currently, we can pick up that extra data by conducting the site audits, but ideally, if you even starting out with a meter on your gas and your electricity, and starting from there, you don't have to start with all the meters from day one. You can start to identify maybe, okay, I want to look at my boilers, track efficiency there, or I know that there's a certain part of the plant that is a big energy user. You can deploy metering. It can also be temporary metering, so that you can hire a meter for a number of weeks and really get into understanding what's going on there, and that can be very, very fruitful, very beneficial to developing opportunities.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Sean. Yeah, and look, obviously important to say technology costs, Internet of Things, all of that stuff means the cost of starting out in that area, understanding your use, obviously, it's getting more accessible for businesses of all sizes.
Absolutely.
Just another one, Sean, there in terms of, because you work a lot with larger energy users, obviously, who are, a fulcrum in the supply chain, both upstream and downstream, but maybe a lot of our attendees today might be sitting within the supply chain of the likes of your customers and trying to understand how do they make a start. I mean, can you give a sense of how important, you mentioned scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, but scope 3 emissions is really where the next big battleground is, and how that's likely to affect businesses of all sizes?
Absolutely, yeah. And scope 1 and 2 is the major focus for many businesses at the minute, and they've already started that journey towards reducing scope 1 and 2 by some companies by 2030, some further out, maybe 2050, depending. But what they're turning around to now is scope 3. So that's starting to be discussed. And scope 3 means if you're a supplier into those companies, they will be asking you to give them the figures on your carbon usage, but they will also be looking for you to develop that strategy on how you're going to reduce your carbon footprint. So they'll be going to all their suppliers and saying, and particularly, and this might be something just to, I suppose, link in with Conor later on. If you're a supplier, probably transport is one of your big areas of energy and carbon, and they'll be looking for a plan, and they'll be looking for you to develop a plan on how you're going to reduce those carbon emissions. So
thanks, John. So I suppose, look, the message there for everyone on the call is it's not just about trying to reduce your own cost exposure. Actually, this is going to come very quickly to you as a condition of doing business with your customers.
Correct. Yeah. So there's massive gains to be made currently, just through cost avoidance from your own energy bills, but also in terms of growing your business and making your business more sustainable long term. If you're supplying into the larger companies, they will be looking for those plans. So it's something that you need to get a strategy together on.
Perfect. Okay. One more from the audience, Tony, asking why, in terms of your carbon reduction roadmap that you outlined as a case study there, Sean. So why would you wait until phase 5 to introduce biofuels? Surely it would be a quick win in terms of GHG reduction, and given current gas and oil prices, potentially a cost saving. I think I know the answer, supply chain and cost related primarily, but look, I'll let you speak to it better.
Yeah, so a couple of points on that would be, we always start out by reducing the load first. So reduce your demand. If you started out day one, let's say you had 1 million kilowatt hours a year of gas usage, and you wanted to replace that straight away with the biogas alternative, you've got to go out and find 1 million kilowatt hours of gas, and you're going to pay the premium at that 1 million kilowatt hours. If you can reduce that down to 500,000 kilowatt hours through energy efficiency projects, then your cost of switching to biofuels is halved. And in terms of supply, there's biofuels on the market, but if you can, it's a growing market, and supply might not always be there. So again, you'd always look at reducing your demand first before moving on to biofuels. Yeah. Perfect.
Thanks for that, Sean. Answered better than I ever could. So look, Tony, I suppose the message there is, one, there isn't a huge supply chain for biofuels today. It will get better over time, but it's probably a longer term time horizon. And two, it's expensive, I suppose, is the thing, as Sean was saying. So look, best practice, definitely eliminate waste. All right, look, Sean, thanks a million for that. I think we're ready to go to Connor, if you're there, Connor.
Yep, I'm ready to roll. Yeah.
Super.
So thanks very much indeed, Harry, and good morning, everyone. Normally my slides start off with a big picture of a great big truck on them, but in deference, I went looking for, I'm talking to Cork today, so I went looking for a picture with a bit of red in it. So we'll see the relevance of the bicycle later on. But yeah, basically chat to you this morning about, I suppose, how to save fuel and get paid. But as has been nicely teed up by Harry and Sean, you're all facing into a winter cost crisis in terms of energy. So really, I'll try and focus in on things you can do straight away, right away, to at least alleviate some of the pain. So that's effectively what we'll be chatting about. My name's Conor Malloy. I've been helping businesses save energy and emissions and reduce costs and increase profits since 2005. So yeah, generally speaking, the day job is dealing with trucks. But just to put things in perspective, for each of your businesses, as Sean mentioned earlier, as suppliers and supply chains increasingly look at scope 3, we're going to, all of us, look out beyond up and down our supply chains, and people are going to ask us about what proportion is transport of our supply chain footprint. Now, we don't have time today to take you through it, but I will at the end give you a guidebook to how to carbon footprint your supply chain in terms of trucks, planes, automobiles, all that kind of stuff. But really try and focus in on what is possibly the biggest challenge we have as a country in terms of emissions reduction. You'll see this graphic. It's an old one from SCAI, a little bit out of date in terms of percentages and tonnages, but what it does very neatly is it just puts the overall emissions footprint, if you like, on the left in perspective. And if you look at energy as a whole, it's the biggest, and within energy as a whole, transport is the biggest, and within that, within transport, cars are the biggest challenge, really. But freight is what I do every day, and that's also a very, very significant challenge. Now, Sean and Harry both mentioned having a structured approach to saving energy and the importance of data. So I mentioned at the top of this how to save fuel and get paid. This is one program, one of many that we designed back a few years ago. It's been running since 2014. The results up to the end of last year were about 34,695 tons of CO2 avoided. From hard-nosed truckers. Let's be clear about this, right? Now, why did they do that? Well, obviously there's profit in it, there's money in it, but they also get a bonus payment for doing it. And to date, that program has paid out over 1.1 million euro in bonuses to them. And last year, there would have been about 7,000 tons avoided, which is about 2 million litres of diesel that they didn't burn. So there was obviously a lot more money in it for them in terms of avoiding burning the diesel in the first place. Now, if you're interested in this kind of program, I'm not going to waste any more minutes kind of explain it or kind of inverted commas selling it to you. I think if you're interested in getting paid for your fuel savings, there's a QR code there that you can scan. I'm going to ask you to grab your phones as well, please, because what I'd like to do next is do a little bit of a straw poll, and let's see, talk about fuel and what we can do about it today, right? Let's, what we can do to actually reduce fuel costs today. So I hope I've kind of established in your minds that it's a significant cost to us, to a country, to us as a country, and to us individually, and then secondly, to businesses in general in terms of CO2, and it is possible to reduce your transport costs and your fuel costs in particular, right? So that's really the point of those first couple of opening slides. If you're not too keen on the old QR code, the link is down there at the bottom left, and we will be distributing the slides afterwards. So all those links will be given out to you afterwards, along with the results of some of these polls. So without further ado, let's do a quick poll. So if you use your mobile phone and go to slido.com, now there's quite a lot of people on the call, so we will give you a minute or two and I'll talk over this a wee bit. And the code for this morning, when you go to slido.com, or you can just scan the QR code, but the code is CC for Cork Chamber 102022. Okay, so let's just see, how much do you personally spend on transport per week? Now you'll see where I'm going with this, but it's obviously difficult to pick a universal business case example, if I can put it that way, for large and small companies together, because some companies outsource, some companies have it all inside, some companies have no transport. So we're just trying to relate it back to your back pocket and help you to put transport as an opportunity for cost saving in perspective for you. So yeah, we've 20, 21, 22 there, so that's good. And just while we're doing that, I'll just get the chat up and see. Right, so yeah, we'll get to at least say 2/3 of it, I think, Harry, before we stop it. So we'll give we 50 plus on the call, so we just let that go past 30 and see how you're doing there, folks. But vast majority be spending 10 to 50 euros a week on transport. Some of you, quite a significant proportion, spending 50 to 100 euros a week on transport, and some people spending significantly more, over 100 euros per week. And the odd individual there, thank you very much, voting for the walk and cycle everywhere. So just to kind of ground us in reality, if I can put it that way. Now up there on Skahar Joe Road in Cork, we have the CSO, and they do a household expenditure survey. It's been delayed by COVID, so there'll be a new one out sometime this year. It's getting late in the year now. But effectively, if you look at this, you can see that an average Irish household spends more on transport each week than they do on food. And again, I'm trying to just bring your attention to the fact that, transport is often one of those costs that we look at and we kind of go, there's nothing we can do about it. We can't change it. We're not in control of it. I hope you're getting the message now. You can, and you can make significant money out of it if you work at it. So that's, as I say, just to ground that and to put it in perspective. What can we do about it? So as Harry and Margaret alluded to, there is a significant crisis coming into this winter. You need immediate actions, things you can do to really help you through the winter in terms of cutting costs. So there is a campaign. The hashtag is reduce your use, and I'm going to pop that into the chat now. Sent that there. You can click on that link later for your offices, but I'm here this morning to talk to you about transport. And what we want to do in terms of transport is give you a way of thinking about transport that you can apply to your business, hopefully to your home as well, and think about ways that you might save energy. So the first thing to say is, do you really need to make the journey in the first place? Okay, so that's kind of the avoid piece, or the system design efficiency. Do you really need to kind of bring that product in? Could you get it closer? Could you get it locally? That kind of idea. The next one then is shifting mode, which is trip efficiency. So which mode can we use? We've decided we have to make the journey. What mode do we use? And then the one that most of us spend most of our time talking about is improving performance. So this is where, we talk about vehicle efficiency, we talk about alternative fuels, etc. So I'll cover all that in the next couple of minutes. Now, in terms of avoiding travel, we're doing it this morning, and COVID really showed us that we can change. 43% of us worked from home during the first lockdown. So that tells you that we can make change happen. And when those fuel prices kick in, and they are going to go back up again, folks, because Russia plus OPEC have just agreed to restrict supply. So it's already gone back above $90 a barrel, and it's going to keep going. So just so you're aware what's going on in terms of trends. But, we're looking at a scenario where we want to see, can we transport more electrons and less molecules? So in other words, can we do more work via, the internet and that side of things, and doing things via video conferencing, etc., which has its own footprint, but it's a lot less than transport. In terms of shifting mode, obviously active travel is good for you and it's good for your pocket. A lot of people will look at a bicycle and kind of go, that really doesn't apply to me. So what I'll try to do for the smaller businesses here is maybe highlight to you, just by way of an example. So it's just a teaching example more than anything else. If you did decide to shift mode, right, from the diesel van to the electric van or to the cargo bike, what would that look like? So first thing is, how much fuel are you going to burn? So obviously the numbers are a wee bit out of date, but as I said, it's just to get the principle across to you. The diesel van would burn about 1,750 litres a year in this example. The electric van, 8,750 kilowatt hours. Now, for those of you trying to translate between the two, that means that the electric van uses roughly half the amount of energy of the diesel van. So already we're ahead with the electric. How much does that cost us? Well, fuel cost on the diesel, obviously it's gone up since, but €2,100 a year. €875 a year for the electric. What's the emissions? You can see there it's about half with the electric. But the kind of things I'd like to draw your attention to would be things like parking rates. We're on about $3.80 an hour up here. So $3.80 an hour for either van is exactly the same. What's the insurance cost? Pretty much the same, right? What's the driving license? You have to have a driving license to drive either of those. And the purchase price, it's maybe say €20,000 for the diesel van. The electric van is going to be significant premium price to buy, but you'll make it up fairly quickly on the fuel cost savings, and also the cost savings in terms of maintenance, tires, etc., things like that. But just to contrast that with a cargo bike, the amount of energy required is minuscule. Okay, the cost is obviously minuscule. The parking is free. There's no insurance, and you don't need a driving license. So when you're trying to hire a hard-to-get driver or someone with a driving license, this can often offer a significant alternative. Now, this does not suit everybody, but the idea is to kind of shake up your thinking in terms of what might I do to try and approach my transport costs and look at alternative ways of doing it. So there's a significant, if you like, labor availability. There's much more labor available without driving licenses than there is with driving licenses. So just to be clear about that in terms of things like local deliveries, etc., have a think about that. Now, I was also asked on this topic, we live on an island. So for a lot of us, we've got to fly. When it comes to our scope 3 emissions, very often we can't actually avoid flying. So I was asked to just say a word about it. So you can't, in other words, we can't shift mode from flying. Well, we can go by ferry, etc. But in business sense, 24 hours extra in a business journey isn't really practical, because that's each way. It might, that would completely break the business model for doing the journey in the first place. So for a lot of us, we still have to fly. So the code for business travel and reducing your CO2 emissions is to fly like a nerd. So fly new, fly economy, fly regular, and fly direct. Now, if you think you know who that is, yeah, you're spot on. But look, the articles are there. You can have a quick look at them, and it's just as I said there. So look, improving performance is what we like to talk about most of the time. And let's just talk about that quickly. Quick example here from the European Environment Agency. And if you look there, and I would say to you, think about a scenario where that 100% is €100, because quite a number of you mentioned that. So we put €100 into the back of the tank. The combustion losses add up to about €70. The other parasitic loss another €5, and the drivetrain loss another €5. So in other words, realistically speaking, only 20 euros out of what we put into the tank is actually moving us around. Now, for a lot of us, we're stuck with the car we have, but if you stop and think about it, just to go back to that business case, 50 euros a week times 50 weeks of the year is €2,500 a year. And what that effectively means is €2,000 is not really doing useful work for you, only €500. But how do we save money in the car we have now? So pretty much everyone on the call will have a car probably, but it looks of the vote, and you'll also have a trip computer with an outside temperature display. So pop on the live feed on your outside temperature display, change it from sort of what the temperature is to the live feed here. You can see here at 120 kilometers an hour, this vehicle is consuming 6.5 liters per 100 kilometers. And when we slow down, much as we all hate doing it, we can pretty much have in this example at any rate, what the fuel consumption is. Now, that's done for kind of dramatic effect with an assistant on a motorway, la-di-da. But realistically, if you go from 120 to 100 kilometers an hour, you'll save 25% in fuel at that point in time. So if you're doing Dublin to Cork, that's quite a significant, or rather Cork to Dublin, that's quite a significant chunk of change. It's worth having a look at. So again, we give you those notes there, but the trip computer will also tell you and your drivers how to drive if you read it and you let it. So in other words, what this one's saying here is you need to change gear. That's what that symbol means. So if you see that popping up in your dashboard, change up, okay? Likewise, you may see warnings saying turn off your air conditioning, turn off your mirror heating. If you do, obviously do it, right? And then finally, here we are at idle. It's burning 0.7 liters an hour. Turn off the ignition. If you think you're going to be parked up for more than 3 minutes, turn off the engine, okay? Now, there's a few more tips than that there in terms of the 5 golden rules of eco driving, which we'll leave you with. All fairly basic, obvious stuff, but they're the kind of thing you should be able to apply in the business and talk to the drivers. Now, a lot of people at this stage will be asking us, okay, hang on a second, I've outsourced my transport. How do I make a start on capturing that side of things? So this is called the GLEC framework. I'm on the expert panel for this council, the Global Logistics Emissions Council. And if you are in a large business or a small business, or as Sean and Harry mentioned there, your customers are asking you about your carbon footprint, and you're wondering how much the carbon footprint of that van or that truck or that plane or that train or that container coming in from China, or whatever it may be, or going back out to China is. All of the default values are in this book, right? Sort of starting at page 86, and it tells you how to do the maths as well. So, just to be clear, there is help out there. You don't have to work hard at it or Google it. It's all written for you there, and the link is at the bottom left of the screen there. You can use that. In addition to reduce your use, the government has a campaign also to get us to, switch 1 journey a week. A lot of us not aware of it, so just to make you aware of that. And that's the QR code to the reduce your use link that I've just put into the chat as well. So just to slowly but surely finish up and open it up to questions about transport and how to save fuel, based on what you've learned here so far this morning, what will you do? So just your phones now, if you've left that page open, they should have switched, the survey should have switched now to a multiple choice. And I'm given the incentives I've given you in terms of where the money is, you might let us know what you might do there in terms of that vote. And then I'm one slide left to finish, Harry, and that's me. Great. Nice to see the slowdown and the reduced short journeys coming up high. It's good to hear it. Depending on where you live, you may or may not have public transport availability. I know I live in Dublin. A lot of people say you're well blessed with public transport, but I actually live almost in the middle of 2 of the major routes, so we've got to walk a long old way to get to the nearest train or dart or whatever the case may be, or Lewis. So it really does depend on each individual's location, but certainly slowing down, glad to see that leading the pack. That's great. If you're asking me what's the one thing I can do right now today to save fuel amidst the fuel price crisis, it's slow down, right? Make it easy for your staff and your drivers to slow down. If you're someone that's outsourced your transport, you need to widen your delivery windows, make it so that the drivers can relax a bit more on the way coming into you. They don't have to have the pedal to metal to get there, into that sort of 30-second window or whatever it is. I'm being a bit extreme there. And do reduce your short journeys. It takes about 8 kilometers to warm a diesel engine. So anything less than 8 kilometers, you're wasting money. Do try and walk and use public transport more. Do consider the bike or the e-bike. The e-bikes are incredibly carbon efficient. Won't burn. And then the last thing I'd like to do, do total your transport costs for the year. I hope I've drawn your attention to it there now. And I'll just leave you with this comment from when I set up the business back in the day. The greenest, most profitable energy is the energy you do not use. Okay, so in other words, energy efficiency has to come first. And certainly in the current circumstances, I'd echo what Sean and Harry were saying there. Really, we have to be energy efficient first in this current scenario. We're not going to be able to get the grants and all the other capital expenditures done through this winter. It's extremely tough times ahead. But with that, Harry, I'm happy to take any questions. Yeah,
that's great. Thanks a million, Conor. As ever, you simplify things in a way like nobody else can, I think. So it's very tangible stuff, very practical stuff. I suppose if I can start maybe, and it's not specifically transport related, but very much your practical way of presenting, simple things that people can do to start off. Like, transport is slow down. It's very tangible, very visible, very obvious. I guess, for the majority or a lot of certainly the attendees on the call, they'll be considering how they can apply that thinking in a building sense, possibly. So, I mean,
I think in the buildings, Harry, we're facing into a scenario where there's a lot of headlines and it gets very confusing for people. And you've two challenges. You have the price of energy, and the price of energy for peak times is going up because, due to objections and politics and inaction, we've sat on our hands as a country and we haven't built enough wind turbines and we haven't built enough pylons. So we've got a major crisis now in terms of grid constraint between 5 and 7 p.m. this winter and for the next 2 winters. So that's 2023, 24, 25. So we really need to get off the grid between 5 and 7 to save money. Now, obviously, if you're also, to bring it back to transport, if all of your employees are, coming out of the office at 5 o'clock on the dot or 5:30, they're heading straight into rush hour traffic. You're after spending money on peak time electricity that you possibly could have avoided. So, by moving, maybe coming in a bit earlier, closing down a bit earlier, we can get off the grid between 5 and 7, which is going to be the most expensive time to be on the grid this winter.
Yeah, really, really practical advice. I suppose, again, look, the starting point is, you say that sharing the information there and reduce your use campaign, a little bit disheartening for me, and I mentioned it at the outset, the findings of the survey results from Cork Chamber, the quarterly business survey, which obviously every business basically is very concerned about the rising cost of energy, yet less than 25% of them are actively considering the easiest and most straightforward thing to do to address that risk, and that's energy efficiency. I mean, what do you put that down to, Conor? Is it knowledge action gap? Is it lack of? Look, we all work in businesses. You're that busy with day-to-day running the business that something like this can seem just one thing too many.
It does, and often what we say to businesses is, do the business case, run the numbers, just like we did there for your back pocket. How much is this energy, whatever it may be, electricity, heat, transport? What does it actually cost in your total? And if you were able to reduce that amount by 10%, what does that do to your bottom line? What would that contribute to the profitability of the company? Because if you can do the same amount of work using 10% less energy, that's pure profit. Okay. And now we often think of it as just being a small, cost saving. Now, by thinking of it as a contribution to profit, you can then start thinking about how much time and effort we would put into, creating that amount of profit in the business. So, let's say it was, to make a sort of a 30,000 euro net profit, we might, certainly the transport business, you'd probably have to do another €1 million worth of turnover. That's an awful lot of effort, and it's a lot easier to be turning off the lights, changing the thermostats, turning them down, turning off the aircon that you've left on since the summer, going around. That's an awful lot easier to do than going out, winning new business, doing the work that go to deliver it, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how I position it. But I absolutely, 18 years in, it's much easier to get your photo taken with a solar panel or a wind turbine or a new electric van. But they're all expensive capital is going to be in short supply. You know, we really do. This is the 1970s all over again. This is your dad saying, turn off the immersion. It's all that crack all over again. I'm afraid. I'm really sorry, but that's the way it is. Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah, we shouldn't be laughing, but you know,
no,
it's those are some of the decisions facing people, so it's not to diminish it.
No.
I mean, Sean, maybe to you on this, Connor's point there, the business case. Again, I was struck by the findings of that survey, and Margaret, even more struck by your comment. I think that you were quite optimistic to see 24%. Us as guys in the energy space would be like, that's appallingly low, so low. And when you look at the other things businesses are considering, actively reducing headcount. I mean, to reduce headcount before actively identifying and eliminating waste in terms of energy in your business just seems mad to me. And I think it, Sean, I mean, just in terms of that, the understanding and knowledge, I guess, at the larger end of the business sector is it's higher, obviously, because energy has been a higher portion of operational cost. I mean, what would you be saying to more mid-sized businesses? What's the best way to make a start in practical terms, and how can they, you know, to Connor's ethos there, practical quick wins that they can really roll forward with to make an impact today?
I suppose the closest analogy to slowing down is really reducing temperatures. And I know coming into winter, that's maybe not something everybody wants to hear, but even a degree or a half degree, if we typically, or in many cases, find boiler systems for heating maybe at 80, 85 degrees, you know, depending on the design of the heating coils and everything else, you can easily get that down to 75, maybe even 60. And that's just massive, because, you know, it gets you into a much better, more efficient heat range, particularly for if you've got an economizing boiler. If you can get your return temperatures down, many people miss this one, but you need to keep your return temperatures down so you get that condensing effect. Otherwise, you have a condensing boiler that is not condensing. So definitely looking at temperatures, and if there's unoccupied space now, particularly with a lot of people working from home, making sure that you can maybe turn off the heating in those spaces. And you know, I suppose throughout COVID, we were trying to get everyone spaced out. So it's maybe something you'd have to look at. But if you can keep people in a limited number of spaces, then and reduce heating in other spaces, that's another way to go.
Super. Okay, thanks for that, Sean. I think a lot of businesses will be looking on, guys, and you'll probably both agree. You'll share my frustration, I guess, at times with policy levers, supports, incentives to businesses. Oftentimes unclear, very convoluted, and difficult to access for your average business owner and operator. But to the credit of the government, I suppose, and in particular SEI, they have upped their game a lot. There are a range of new supports, I think, in particular relevant to SMEs. So there's a new SME energy audit voucher, €2,000. I'd be recommending any SME on the call today, if you haven't already availed of that support, go and do it. Go and do it straight away. Get the advice of an expert. Get them in to look at your business and identify ways you can eliminate waste. There's a voucher there. It mightn't, depending on the size of your business, your operation, it mightn't cover all of the cost of the audit, but it will cover a significant portion of it. I mean, Connor, if I can go to you, you're very plugged in the whole policy end of things. There was a question there around, you know, benefit in kind and private employer parking they do in Nottingham, the UK. Again, this concept of modal shift, which is very important to the whole transport area. I mean, if an employer was to try to adapt that philosophy for themselves and their business, for their employees and how they travel to work, and also their transport related energy use.
But I think so the BIK question is a good one. It's been tried several times. It tends to provoke a lot of argy-bargy. How effective it's going to be, I don't know, right? Because we've never done it here in any meaningful way, even though it's on the statute books. what is happening with employers, like I have employers in training courses every week. We're doing, trainings 3-4 days a week, and it's become apparent to hang on to their employees in the face of these increased fuel costs, particularly people running shifts, that they are now putting buses on the road to collect employees, not necessarily from their door, but from various collection points that they can walk to, so that they can bring them in to work. So in other words, that modal shift is happening because employees can't afford to go to work. They can't afford to fill the car. So, rather than, how would I put it, sort of putting more taxes, more burdens, and creating more side arguments. They're not the perfectly valid argument, but they're on the side. Get into the core issue. We need people to go to work, and we need them to make a living. We need them to be able to put bread on the table. And I would say I've been quite surprised by the number of people, as in companies that have been in training programs, who said, yeah, we've already got a bus on the road. We've already put in a secure location for the bikes. And in one place where I said, where'd you put them? Because I knew the location. I said, oh, they're just locked in reception. I mean, to hell with what it looks like. We need to do it. So that's what they did. So they've allowed their staff now, who previously couldn't cycle, they can now cycle in, and they're just locked up in reception under the eye of the receptionist. Sounds a bit crude, but the point I'm making is people are acting now. They're not waiting around to get a grant or whatever. They're just getting on with it. And I think for those listening, the argument around the BIK is absolutely a good one. I'd probably prefer to see a congestion charge and a per kilometre toll, because we need that in place. And if we're going to have a fight, let's have a fight about that, because frankly, political fight that is, because we need that to replace excise as excise reduces over the years to come. So look, that's my tuppence worth on it, Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Conor. Sean, maybe if I can go to you. Government in the last couple of weeks announced the business energy support, which, look, again, I think us in the industry would say doesn't really cut it. It's a good step in the right direction, but support for 40% of endless increasing energy costs. I mean, Sean, if I was to say to you, what greater supports do you feel are needed at the larger end of the market to really drive climate action, energy efficiency? There are some good schemes there, the renewable heat scheme and things like that, but definitely I think the pace of approvals and things like that can be a sense of frustration, especially for businesses trying to manage supply chain costs in the environment we're in. I mean, what changes do you think need to come to really drive energy efficiency and climate action in industry from a policy perspective?
Yeah, I think the amount of grants potentially available, or the amounts that government bodies are willing to support, is probably fair enough. It's really, like you mentioned, it's the administration of it really that can be a bit burdensome and maybe a bit time consuming. So yeah, I'd like to probably see more support in the administration of those supports really. I think for people on the call, maybe Enterprise Ireland or IDA are a very good way to get funding, get support. They're usually, we find them much faster to turn around those supports, and they're the same level of support as you might get through SEI. Not being down on SEI, but if we want to get access to funding more rapidly, then I think that's the best way to go. And you can build those strategies, so you can discuss with Enterprise Ireland not just your energy sustainability strategy, but other growth strategies as well too for your business. So I think you can fold it all in together.
Okay, thanks for that. Connor's having a technical issue, folks, so he's going to have to
apologies,
make his apologies and jump off. But
thank
Sean,
you. The best of luck to you all. Cheers. Thanks,
you, Connor. Appreciate it. Look, Sean, we'll continue the discussion, and look, what we might do then, Margaret, is open to the floor for some questions if there are some. Margaret, I suppose maybe I might go to you actually in a minute just to speak a little bit about. So we obviously, through Energy Cork and with yourselves in the chamber, ran the SME Pilot Energy Champion Programme. Which it started before COVID, and then kind of, look, with COVID, obviously it's challenging to kind of see it through. But I suppose I just want to bring to people's attention the widening of that scheme now, the fact it's going to scale up to 100 people with the support of Enterprise Ireland, yourselves, SEI as well. And I suppose what we're trying to do there is to help smaller businesses understand their energy use, develop a plan to manage it more effectively, and then link in with supports via SCI for audits and for project delivery. Margaret, do you want to just give a little bit of context on, you're seeing it obviously in the survey results there, how important this is going to be for business?
Yeah, thanks, Harry. So for sure, there is an opportunity for companies who are seeking to get a handle on their data. I know that is the primary challenge for small companies, owner managed, or companies with other priorities like the day job. So I suppose the Energy Champion program will give a framework to gather data and to be able to measure and monitor and to find a baseline and then to put in a plan. So Harry, as you mentioned, we did a sample with I think 10 to 12 companies in the last year, and it's to scale that up, and it's to take the learnings from the trial and to see an impact for companies at the end of the day in terms of their energy efficiency and costs. So it's a starting point. So I suppose the call out or the ask is, if there are companies here today keen, you can share your details and we'll certainly keep you in the loop and let you know when the opportunity is ready for sign up.
Super, thanks for that, Margaret. A comment here, I guess, from Laura Morrison. So she's saying great improvements to rail connectivity lately. For example, the half-hourly Cove Cork Middleton ticket prices have been reduced, but hardly any publicity about it. Stations are badly signposted, timetables and prices aren't known about. A lot more could be done to raise awareness of options. Sean, maybe I just want to put that to you in a broader context, and definitely something we see a lot, and I'm sure you guys see it a lot in AM3 as well, is the lack of awareness of supports, the accessibility of those supports. I suppose we really need to up our game from a government agency point of view on that front, the whole communication side of it. How important is that? And really, you've service providers like ourselves kind of stepping in to fill the gap, but a lot more needs to be done, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely, and even for large companies, you'll still find a lack of knowledge around supports, which is surprising in a way, especially these are companies that with multiple locations across the country, quite a significant investment in terms of jobs, and they aren't fully aware of the supports that they can have, not just for energy sustainability. So yeah, awareness is a big thing, and I suppose awareness in terms of the supports and the schemes that are available is one thing, and I suppose if I could expand that out, just generally creating awareness around energy use and energy efficiency in the business, in your own business, can have a big impact. If you get your buy-in from your employees on energy efficiency, it really goes a long way to making sure that you're competitive and keeping your costs down.
Super, thanks for that, Sean. So look, just kind of getting to the wrapping up stage, I guess, but I don't know, Margaret, if anybody has any questions, do they raise their hand if they want to speak across the mic? Obviously, that is, people have been popping in some questions in the chat. That's great. Do you want to go to the floor before I kind of sum up?
Yeah, there was a question there on car sharing, and I think Connor said BlaBlaCar, which I know is for sure in Europe, but is it in Ireland? There's different versions. Car sharing amongst employees, like pooling together in an informal way. Is there any examples of that?
Not that I'm aware of. That's definitely Connor's area, but I think through apps like the one he's mentioned, certainly. But I guess he would say it's more modal shift now, as opposed to, look, carpooling is good, it helps, but Bus Connect's obviously being rolled out now in Cork and starting to be really planned for in a meaningful way. I guess it's really the shift towards public transport is kind of what we want to see in around city areas for sure. But look, at what I'd say is, anybody with any questions, transport specific, send them to yourself, Margaret. We'll get them to Connor and maybe circulate to the attendees. Question from Frank Mulcahy, is there a list of approved energy auditors that SMEs can use with the €2,000 voucher? Yes, there is, Frank. So if you simply go to Google and type in SEAI SME energy audit voucher, SEI have a dedicated page that will handhold you through the entire process. So effectively, there's a list of approved auditors. You can pick your auditor, you have a chat with your auditor, make sure they're available and that they can help you and support you. You lodge your application then via SEI and they'll issue you with a voucher. So you don't have to pay any money. It's a voucher. SEI handle the payments and everything. The auditor will engage with you, do a report, and hopefully you'll get some opportunities from that then to save money. Shane as well, another comment here. There's also significant potential for the nighttime economy and cultural sector and getting people into town via the brilliant service and pricing moves by Irish Rail. Good point, Shane. Stephen Hackett, Tax Saver is also a super product. If you aren't aware of it, customers can save up to 50% in the cost of their monthly or annual tickets. Again, all of this information, certainly lots of good stuff there, but awareness, getting it out there is obviously a key thing. So look, Margaret, what I might do is sum up. So look, I suppose heard from two really insightful speakers. Thanks to Conor Malloy for he's taken transport and practical, tangible things you can do as a business to reduce your cost. Sean, obviously, very knowledgeable and insightful in the larger energy user area. Great to see the strides EM3 are making. Certainly a lot of opportunities there for larger businesses with rising energy prices. Every unit you can avoid using is a very significant cost saving to the business. I suppose just to emphasize again, go and look at the SEI SME Energy Audit Voucher. If you are an SME, go about getting access to that support. Keep an eye out certainly for the Cork Chamber and the Energy Cork SME Energy Champion Initiative. Certainly, you know, huge opportunity there to help a large number of SMEs in Cork City and Cork County in the coming 12 months with their energy use. I suppose again to bring it back to the findings of your survey, Margaret, definitely I cannot emphasize enough with anybody in business. Identify how you can eliminate the waste before you consider reducing headcount. There is money there to be saved without very challenging steps being taken. Simple things like understanding where you use energy, the times you use it, and then fundamentally questioning, do I need to use it at those times? Do I need to use it to that extent? Sean made a really simple point around adjusting temperature set points and things. All of those small little changes help. Conor emphasized again simple things like turning off lights or adapting working patterns and routines. All of that stuff will really help. So look, thanks to you all. I'm going to hand it back to you, Margaret, to wrap it up.
Thanks very much, Harry. And also just what you highlighted at the end there about awareness. I suppose that's the real benefit of Cork Chamber. We kind of have an overview of what's happening in the market and hear your experiences. So if we can help join the dots and share information and signpost, you know, we'd be happy to do so. So yeah, thanks a million for everyone for your participation today. It really, I hope it served to prompt some thinking, kind of to shake up your perspective on energy efficiency, and giving you the impetus to act now. Like we know we've covered, it's about reducing carbon footprint and costs, but also there's potential and opportunity there for growing your business and really becoming more sustainable in the long term. So finally, a big thank you to our speakers, to Sean and to Conor, and to our facilitator, Harry. We are really grateful for your time and your expertise shared this morning. And thank you to our sponsors, Cork Chamber, Skillnet, Gas Networks Ireland and Matheson. And finally, a thank you to you, our viewers. If you're curious to hear more, I think Harry mentioned, you can get in touch, keep in touch with us at the Chamber, and we'd love to see you again for our next Sustainable Cork programme session, which is on the 11th of November, and that's on the topic of diversity and inclusion. So for now, that's everything from us. Enjoy the rest of your day and keep in touch. Thank you.